Well, another full house. I remember 1 year ago, right? Ladies and gentlemen, honorable court and council members, distinguished guests, fellow faculty members, and dear students, welcome to today's Fireside Chat. I'm Ika Go. I'm a provost of the university. I'm your MC today again. It is a pleasure to see such an enthusiastic audience and gather here for what promise to be extraordinary conversations with two truly distinguished and visionary leaders. It is my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed guests for today's Fireside Chat. First, let me introduce our esteemed host, Professor Harry Shum, our Council Chairman, and you all know him well. And he is a trailblazer in AI and technology innovation. Professor Shum's perspectives on intersection of technology and leadership perfectly complements today's conversation. And join him is the one and only Dr. Stephen Schwarzman, Chairman, CEO, and co-founder of the Blackstone Group, one of the world's leading investment firms. Dr. Schwarzman is widely recognized as one of the most influential figures in global finance and philanthropy. His leadership transformed Blackstone from a boutique advisory firm he co-founded into a global financial powerhouse. He has also been a champion of the education and international exchange, most notably through the establishment of Schwarzman Scholar programs at the Tsinghua University. And I'm very pleased to see there are a lot of Schwarzman Scholars today among the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to give a warm welcome to Dr. Stephen Schwarzman and Professor Harry Shum. You have to notice another laser jacket.
Steve, we are just so happy to have you here. Come to Hong Kong, home to HKUST, at this beautiful Clearwater Bay campus and this beautiful Shaw Auditorium. In fact, so many of your old friends and the colleagues are here, like Anthony Le, Li Ping Zhang, the Sebastian Mang, Lei Zhang, and many, many others are here. But there is this very special group, you love so much, called the Schwarzman Scholars in Hong Kong. Should we call them out? Help them stand up and to be recognized. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Walter Wang of HKUST for organizing this. Professor Wang is actually from the first cohort of Schwarzman Scholars. So, Steve, we have very little time. I get into this very quickly, directly. I read your book. I have a number of books later we'll give the audience as gifts. Many lessons you shared, 25 at least. I actually started with lesson. The first lesson I'm going to share is actually lesson number 8. You said that when presenting yourself, remember that impressions matter. The whole picture has to be right. So when you agreed with me to come to HKUST in June office, then I felt long and hard. How can I present you to look so much better than Jensen Huang? I went to Haining, Zhejiang province, the city called Haining, where they make 90% of leather jackets for the world. My friend there, Mark, said, well, Steve actually will look great with a leather suit. should we stand up and show the audience? We do a little bit of John Travolta, yeah. We have this logo here, and we have HKUST here. There's new fashion here still. So we have to look good at the HKUST. Steve, we have a lot of topics. People are really here to hear from you. You know, we start from the first one is the entrepreneurship, and so you have been so successful. You know, starting in '85, started your own company, Blackstone. If I'm not mistaken, you started with Peter Peterson with $400,000.
Yep, 400.
Now it's what, 1.2 trillion asset. That is 1 trillion enough for you? You keep going.
It may be enough for me, but it's not enough for the stock market. So we keep going, and actually, we're at $1.2 trillion right now. So the next objective is $2 trillion.
2 trillion. Next stop is 2 trillion.
That's in life. You always keep going. You keep creating. There's always something new. If you just stand still, you're actually going backwards.
Yeah. Well, you know, Steve, you know, that your whole life story is just so inspiring to us. And actually at HKUST, the university is known for, you know, educating students and encouraging professors to actually start their business. So I want to start with the first question for the students, that you quit your job when about to get promoted to start your own business. Do you think students should take the leap into entrepreneurship right away, like after graduation today, or wait until they have gained some work experience?
Well, I'm in the financial business, and you actually have to know something to be successful. So you can't start your own business when you haven't worked, where you haven't learned, when you haven't had somebody training you. You need mentors. So I waited till I was around 37, which I thought was very old. Now that I'm old, I realize I wasn't old at 37, but still, you know, I try to discourage people in my field from going out. And every once in a while, somebody wants to leave my firm, Blackstone, and go out on their own. And if they're really mature, if they've got a gift, if they know their craft, I'll encourage them. But almost every person who's left to do that in their 20s has failed and has had mediocre careers. They just didn't know enough. So, you know, I'm a big believer, you know, in knowing what you want to do. And if you're going to start something, you have to be able to offer something different than what everybody else is doing. Why should they use you? You're young and inexperienced. If somebody else is doing it just as well, they might as well use them. So you always have to think about something new, something different that you can bring to the world that the world isn't doing.
Right. Something differentiating. But you almost sound like professors should start a business, not the students. They have more experience already. Yeah. So we have a good combination in HKUST. Professors and the students start a business together. So Steve, you know, that you many lessons you shared, you know, in your 25 life lessons there, and another one I resonate with me very well is how to sell. And you said in the lesson 15, you said that sales rarely get made on the first pitch. Just because you believe in something doesn't mean everyone else will. And you need to be able to sell your vision with conviction over and over again. And the reason it's so resonating with me is that I thought, for us doing research is actually very similar. You just have to tell people what you believe. This whole neural network thing never worked. People didn't really believe in that. Then Jeff Hinton just kept going and going and going. And you know what? Now this whole AI thing is booming, and that he got the Turing Award and the Nobel Prize. So, but there must be something there you have mastered, this self-speech skill. Would you like to share some of your experience?
You should always have like a unique vision. And if you believe in something, I found you get rejected a lot if you're doing something that other people haven't done. I learned to really not like rejection, but I realized I had no alternative. So when we started and did our first fund, it was a whole new area. We were probably the 8th firm in the private equity world. Right now, there are 10,000 firms. So it was a new thing, and we had, my partner and I, no investment experience whatsoever. Actually making investments. We were advisors, and when we changed, we wrote a very good document to go out and sell, but we usually get 17 people who rejected us, compared to one that would say yes. So I was used to being quite a successful person before I went out on my own. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what we were doing. And if we couldn't get meetings with most of the people, but could you imagine spending 2 hours of your time with like 3 people ahead of you, pitching your heart out, trying to convince them. And at the end of the presentation, it was a bit like, the emperor in Gladiator, where he'd go, get out of here. And there's something that happens when they do that with enormous frequency, that I actually used to have a big ego. It sort of got sanded down, and you just would feel terrible. But if you want to win, you have to pull yourself together. You have to do it again. You have to think about, did something happen at that meeting that didn't go well that I could learn from? But the sheer, ability to take pain, suffering, rejection, it's what goes with being an entrepreneur. When you see somebody like Jensen or myself, and we come up and we're successful people, you have some vision that just sort of happens. It does not just happen. Jensen told me 1996, basically he was about as close to bankruptcy as he could be. Jack Ma at Alibaba, who I've talked to, is same thing. When we started, we contacted 500 companies, and no one hired us. These are people who knew us, and they still wouldn't hire us. What does that say? Well, what it says is that I made a strategic error, which is what most entrepreneurs do. They believe their vision. When we went into business and doing mergers and acquisitions to start, There was no small company that ever did that. They were all done by the major firms. But since I was at a major firm and I was doing all this business with my partner, we figured the exact same people would hire us. I thought that was rational. Unfortunately, there was no precedent for using, like two people in a little office who basically had a made-up name to do the business. But we were the same two people. Why would it make a difference? Well, apparently, it did make a difference to them. Now, there are lots of smaller boutiques that do that business. It's well accepted. But we were the idiots who were out there the first time because I never crossed my mind that the same person who was using my judgment wouldn't use it if I was sitting in a different office. So it took enormous effort. We tried to call 500 people. Not everybody would take our call. These were people who knew us, and no one hired us in 3 months. This is very depressing. Also, it's bad that your money starts running out. Even worse. So after 3 months, because it takes a long time to try and contact people, I said to my partner, what do we do now as a strategic plan? He said, well, let's wait a month and call everybody else again. I mean, this goes for great insight in finance. And we did it, and somebody by accident, just took pity on us, I guess, and we got $50,000, which was less than any legal bill I had ever paid on a deal. But it was $50,000, and we stopped the bleeding. And then eventually some other people hired us. So if you get nothing else out of this discussion, the pain and suffering of starting something is really very high. The rewards, if you survive it, can be, whether it's Jensen's case or my case or like Bill Gates's case, or there are all kinds of great successes, but 9 out of 10 startups fail. Either the wrong idea, or you just don't have the appetite for self-abuse that apparently I did. I didn't know that's what I was doing. But now, after attending this, you will know that's what you're doing.
So it's hard to be an entrepreneur. You just have to have the grit and the guts. But apparently you have done so well. It must be something right. And one of the great things you have done is hiring great people. You emphasize that again and again in your book. And in fact, you famously said that you only hire 10s. Hire as many 10s as you could, and you don't want to hire the 7th or 8th. But how did you really identify those talents? And if I'm not mistaken, you also once said that if someone is already over 40-some years old, you don't really necessarily even need an interview. So what's your secret here? Get the best people to join Blackstone.
Geez, I find it pretty easy to figure out who's really got a gift. And when you see one, you know one. And in the real world, outside of the academic gates, people know who those other people are. It's just the nature of it's no different than great doctors know other great doctors. Great athletes know who the other great athletes are. And, you can check people out, particularly if they've worked. I have one sort of set of observations that if you're older than 40, you are your reputation. So you can meet somebody if they're older than 40, and you can think they're really, really very good. If you start checking around and everybody else says they're really sort of flawed, you don't see it on the first go, those other people will be right and you will be wrong. Because a large number of observations, sort of gets to that conclusion. And people can fool you, particularly if they're older. They're better dissemblers. When they're younger, it's harder because, they aren't fully formed. So what people say about other people, young people can reinvent themselves. Somebody who's 23 is different than somebody who's 28, way different than somebody who's 33, 35. And so you have to look at everybody consistent with how old they are and how much experience. But, people who are 10s, in sports, Michael Jordan, who I think was the best basketball player who ever lived, when he showed up for his first practice in college, his coach said, this may be the greatest player I've ever seen as a skinny high school kid, because he just had that extra something. This is a science university. And I was thinking about starting a big thing in the science area. And so I was going to some of the schools, and I went to Harvard and MIT and Berkeley, UCSF and Stanford, to spend half an hour with academics in those areas to learn about a particular area. And I didn't even know who I was seeing. They would just bring people in. And I was at Berkeley, and a lady walked in to the room and, sat down, and she had sort of like an aura around her. Every once in a while you meet somebody who's really pretty amazing. And, she sat down and there was this glow. And I was sort of looking at that, and I asked a question, and I got this wonderful answer. So at the end of a half an hour, she left. I was totally wowed. And so I said to the person who was sort of like my shepherd, who did I just see? And it was Jennifer Doudna, who invented CRISPR, who won the Nobel Prize. Right. And nobody gave me a briefing. But as soon as she walked in the room, there was something unusual. She didn't do anything unusual. It was just, you could feel it. So,
got it. I mean, it sounds like that we should keep you here a little longer, go to a few more conference rooms here at UST, then you will be able to see some amazing people here too. Yeah. So if I want to move on to the second topic of leadership, I want to start by saying that we see you not only as a business leader, you are really a world leader. So many government leaders come to seek your advice. In fact, you got awards from the president of France, president of Mexico. Of course, President Trump calls you, Chinese leaders also seek, your wise counsel. And so being a business leader and also a world leader, I want to ask you, are there some core principles, the similar core principles for having an impact both for business and, for the world?
Well, the first thing is, I generally try and be what I would call a friend of the situation. Like, what's going on here? What isn't working right? What needs to be fixed? And you try and think about everyone's point of view on a problem. You can almost like make pretend you are every one of those people, or you are this country. What's on your mind? What are you trying to achieve? And why aren't you doing it? And how do we solve that problem? It starts out cognitively, and then observationally. Like, how is that person behaving? What seems to be annoying them? It's fun because there's so much information now. You can read the media and know what's going on almost every place. And so sometimes those people will tell you. Sometimes you need to sort of intuit it. Then you try and solve things. You didn't have to have great insight to see that something was going wrong in the last week with China and the U.S. If you looked at each of those moves, one move on rare earths, one move on tariffs, look like big moves on both, like bad outcomes. Like, does anybody really want bad outcomes? I mean, so that's an opportunity to look at a situation and say, okay, let's do something here to avoid like a real awful potential thing. And so it's important to have access to people so you can talk to them, ask them why they're doing something or whatever. But I find, I always, as part of my nature or part of my training, everybody in a drama has their own stuff, and you just need to be them. Pretend you're them. How do you solve their problem?
Well, Steve, it's amazing you just said that, getting access is so important. Getting access to those critical, important people is so important. I cannot imagine any other person, in fact, right now, having your superpower, your access to the most powerful people in the world. The observation I had is actually, even when you just graduated, you got interviewed, the very interesting interview question. Yeah, they say, what kind of job do you want? You said you want to be a telephone switchboard because you take in the information from countless feeds, sorting it and setting it back out into the world. That's exactly who you are, Steve. You bridge things. You bring people together, and you are the bridge. You don't erect walls unlike others. No.
What I'd say, just as advice for all of you, who are about to graduate or still in school, don't tell people you want to be a telephone switchboard. I thought that person actually wanted to know what I was thinking. And at that point, this is before the digital world. They had all these wires that would go into some like machine, and then it would direct the call somewhere else. So that's what I wanted to be. So, like I want to learn a lot of things, figure it out, and then move it around and make something happen. And the guy who was interviewing me was not very conceptual. He thought I actually wanted to be a machine or something. And he said, we really don't have a place in our company for you.
It's so funny, Steve. There's so many interesting stories in your book and you share it with us now. But I really want to move to our third topic of giving back and your amazing work in philanthropy. And also your philanthropy work is extremely thoughtful and covers so many different areas. And you mentioned that you also contribute to Kennedy Center. You help in the U.S. track and the field. You help some Catholic schools. But the one area I really want to ask you is your amazing, significant contribution to higher education, to the universities. Of course, you donate a lot to your alma mater, Yale. That's understandable. But the people always wonder, why did you donate to MIT, Oxford, and the Tsinghua University? And there are all those people here, of course, are wondering that, what about HKUST? But that'll... What? But that we can talk later. And
you thought I didn't know this was a setup.
But seriously, I remember when you were donating to MIT, and it was very kind of you to call me and ask me about the name of Schwarzman College. You asked me that, should we call it the Schwarzman College of AI, or should we call it the Schwarzman College of Computing? I voted for computing. I thought the computing in the technology level is even more fundamental. At that time, at least, I was thinking AI was more at the up layers. But I think people are just wondering that, why you did those things, especially Schwarzman College.
I do things for reasons that actually aren't apparent. I'm usually trying to address a really big problem I think is important, and then I find a mechanism to do it. And if it's unfortunate for me, it becomes a charity, and then I have to give the money because I'm not trying to give away these large amounts of money. It just becomes necessary to do something that I want to achieve. So my MIT gift, which is, that was really crazy, right? We were talking about AI. I was talking with the president of the university, Raphael Rafe, who I had met through the Schwarzman Scholars, and about AI, and he was talking about Jack Ma told me how amazing AI was going to be. And I wanted to sort of check with Raphael. And Raphael said it's going to be way better than Jack thinks. And I said, how do you know that? And he said, because we invented AI at MIT. I said, so when did you do that? He said, 1957. I said, so where you been? And he said there wasn't enough compute power to take what we, sort of invented and start actioning it. But he said, in fact, in 2012, there was enough compute power. So I was talking to him around 2015 or 16, And he said, this is going to just explode now as semiconductor power is increasing. And I said, so what's your dream? And he said, my dream is to be the first AI-enabled university in the world. I said, well, what do you need to do that? He said, I need to double my CS faculty and assign people to these other divisions. And I said, well, that's interesting. And I was talking to him principally because I was going to China a lot, and I saw the Chinese starting to really use AI. And I'm not a science person, but I didn't see any visible use of AI in the United States. And I was talking to him about that. And when he said what he wants to do is double his faculty, I was thinking, if he does that, then Berkeley's going to have to do that, and Stanford's going to have to do that, and Carnegie Mellon is going to do that. And then, we're really going to kick off a new round of academic excellence and energy that can mobilize the United States. So just as we were ending dinner, just because I'm a financial person and not for any other reason, I said, well, how much would it cost for you to do, what you were saying? He said, I don't know. You asked me for my fantasy life. That's what it would be. So, okay. We had met in France. We were both on vacation. So I didn't think anything more about the conversation. So he calls me up in around 4 weeks, can I come and see you? So I thought he had a problem of some type. People do that with me sometimes. I don't ask him why they want to see me. So he comes in and he says, I've got the answer for you. I said, the answer for what? He said, well, you asked me what this vision would cost. I said, oh, yeah. I said, so what does it cost? He said, $1 billion too.
Only $1 billion.
I said, $1 billion to what? He said, dollars. And then he said, why don't you give it?
That's quite direct.
I said, give what? He said, give me $1 billion too. I said, Raphael, what have you been smoking? I said, I'm not going to give you $1 billion $2. Why would I do that?
That's right.
So he said, well, you got to give me at least 600. So I said, Raphael, I'm minding my own business. I will not giving you 600. He said, well, if you don't give me a big donation, then we won't be able to do this. And we have to do this for the good of the United States. So I'm thinking, how did I get into this movie? This is like a terrible situation. So I ended up giving him $350. So
I just did a calculation. That's 30% of what he originally had.
So I said, look, Raphael, here's the problem. I don't really know anything scientific. So you're telling me this is good, is good for you. I said, but here's what I want. I want you to put up $350.
Yeah.
And of the $350, I want your board of directors to put up at least $120 million as individuals, because you have almost all scientists on your board. And if they're willing to write the check and you're willing to like write the rest of it, then I know this is real. I said, just trusting one conversation with Jack, the rest of it, I mean, for $350 million, I'm trusting, but not that trusting. So he came back 3 weeks later, unfortunately, and said, I got the 350. So then I went, oh, I'm trapped. Right? It does. So that's where that charitable gift came from, right? But we got the thing done, and then he says, "Oh, we got another problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "We need more compute time." I said, "What's compute time?" He said, "Compute time is time on the fast computer so you can do experiments." I said, "How much money do you need?" And he said, I'm not sure, but I need it. So at this point, I understood this routine. I said, well, go back and it's not just for him. He wants it for the big research universities. So, he calls me up. He said, we need $5 billion minimum a year. And we got to have plans. So I need it for at least $5 million. I need $25 billion. So I said, I'm out. And I said, there's only one place you can get that. That's the U.S. government. And he said, I know, I've been trying for 10 years. They won't give me anything. So I said, I will get it for you.
Wow.
He said, how are you going to get it? I said, I'm going to get it because it's worthy. Okay? And I know all these people, and this is an important national thing, and I'm going to get it.
No, our president is listening carefully, taking all the notes. And I also noticed we have some Hong Kong government officials, senior officials in the audience. They are really learning from you that they will give you HKUST more money.
Yes, I have instructions after this discussion to cancel all my electronic communications.
Steve, we actually want to continue this dialogue, but I got the hint that, we might be running out of time very soon. But I still want to just say huge congratulations to you and the Schwarzman College. Next year, we will celebrate the 10th anniversary in Beijing, in Tsinghua University. My wife, Kaya, and I already made the plan to join you, Ding Xuelan, and the other scholars and all the scholars to celebrate with you. Just to tell us that, how proud you are with Schwarzman College.
I mean, this was another one of these charity things gone wrong. So what happened with this one, is it was the 100th anniversary of Tsinghua University, and I think it was like 2011. So the president of the university asked me for $100 million for their 100 years. Well, how these people come up with this stuff? So also there was something called the global financial crisis that this guy hadn't heard about. And so our stock had just sort of really gone from 33 to 3. That's pretty competitive for worse stock. So you lose 90% of your net worth, and the guy shows up and says, give me $100 million. So that's why he's an academic, not in business. Right? So I made him go away. And then they got a new president. So he waited 2 years and came to see me and said, can you help us out? And he said, give me any idea you have of what you'd like to do if you can make a big donation. So I was thinking about it. I said, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could use sort of like a Rhodes Scholar model and bring people from all over the world to China so they could see not what the media says about China, but what real China is. And spend a year, because I thought more than a year was too much that for people to divert their careers for. And we'd start a school to introduce them to China, travel, to see different parts of China. And also I wanted people from all over the world. So I came up with a formula. I'm a little bit like a man. I sit around, I say, okay, what would be perfect? If we could get 20% Chinese, 40% Americans, and 40% from the rest of the world, and have these people all together for a year in one building where, in effect, they'd be in a situation there was no option other for them to really get to know each other and form a cohort, a group that would stay lifetime in touch with each other, because they were all like, in deference to you sitting there, super people. They were selected to be future leaders of the world. And that was the vision. It turned out it's the reality. So I got stuck putting up $120 million for that. And then I had a fundraise, and I raised another $450 million door to door. At that point, China-U.S. relations were great. Raising money was not that hard. You had to be audacious, not particularly offensive, and people would give you money. And I'm very good at asking people for money so I don't have to give them the money. I mean, it's like, now the idea that I'm a philanthropist is really sort of ironic. I've sort of spent $1.5 billion so far, on these random accidents. And each one of the things I do that you see as, supporting, sort of higher education.
Yes.
I'm doing to achieve a different purpose. I just did how much money is it? 185 million pounds. The pound's really expensive now. So it's like $260 million to build a new humanities center at Oxford. So why is anybody silly enough to invest in the humanities when everybody else knows that STEM is the only place that you're going to get a return? And I recognize that too. I had already given the money to MIT. But the reason I did that is I'm concerned about what the role is for humans in the world of AI. Because AI is going to change the nature of work as well as invention, and it's going to change a lot of the economic balance of the world over time, and it's going to be a different world. So what I want is I want to have the study of the purpose of a person to be highlighted. And we're going to have to think about what happens with potential structural unemployment, or with the fact that a lot of creative jobs will be going other places. So Oxford had the largest philosophy department in the world. And there are other types of things that can speak to the human experience. And I wanted to set up ethics and AI operation there. And I thought that this is like important 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And so it looks like I made a donation to Oxford, but it just happened that they were looking for something, and I changed what they wanted to do so that we can help, human beings at a time I won't be here anymore because we all have just a brief time here. And so that's turned into some super amazing outcome.
Steve, I do see the common theme, in all your contribution, the investment among those universities is really, doing something great for humanity. The AI you mentioned about the Oxford Center for Humanity, for example, a big program there they do for AI ethics. I also thought a place like Hong Kong, where the East meets West, is also a good place to study AI ethics, different culture, different kind of people. What you shared is just so fascinating. I still have, so many pages of questions, but I see all those people are hinting to me that we are out of time. And so I cannot afford asking any questions anymore, I guess. So I'm going to just use your 25 rules for work and life. Rule number 1. I'm going to read that to conclude today's fireside chat with you, if you don't mind. You said rule number 1. It's as easy to do something big as it is to do something small. So reach for a fantasy worthy of your pursuit with rewards commensurate to your efforts. I think that will be something President Yi and I will try to do at this great university now with the distinguished alum like you to help. We'll go for the third medical school.
Thank you so much, Steve. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a wonderful dialogue. I believe we all enjoyed it very much. Because Steve have to leave for the airport, fly back to the States. So I have to do some very unpopular job, but just cut the dialogue short. And before the ending, I would like to invite our president, Nancy, come to present Steve our gift.
Taking a step up a little bit. Yeah. This is the university.
Okay.
Take picture.
Thank you. I'm sure if we last this dialogue for 10 more minutes, Steve will give us $100 million.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah.